Welcome to another edition of Union County Conversation, a show that helps you understand Union County government and its services. I'm your host, Meg McElwain. Union County Conversation is a show that is intended to help increase transparency in government services and government business. Joining me today is Jeff Yates, who is the Executive Director of Administrative Services and Chief Financial Officer for Union County Government. Thanks for taking time.
Thank
from
you.
Your busy schedule. The county's in the middle of budget season, so this is Jeff's busy season. Today we're going to talk about the recent increase in the bond rating from the S&P that the S&P Standard & Poor gave to Union County government. So Jeff, let's start with just the basics. What is a bond and what are certificates of participation?
Okay. Well, there's a couple of things that the county can do to build buildings or build large structures. We issue debt, just like you would if you were buying a house or if you were building your home. The county issues essentially a mortgage. And those come in a couple of different versions, but the most general version is what we refer to as a general obligation bond. And that's generally voted on by the voters. And when it passes through referendum, then that pledges the county's tax authority to issue that debt. And much like we built the schools in the 2000s when we were building quite a few schools, those were generally funded with GOs or voted on by the public. Mm-hmm. The other option is what's referred to as a certificate of participation or a COP, and that is a non-voted instrument that essentially pledges some kind of revenue source. Not your tax authority, not your general tax authority, but some kind of other special revenue source, your sales tax or some kind of other instrument or other pledge to cover that debt. Just like when you issue a mortgage or you go get a mortgage for your house is actually securing that note. Right. Well, the county uses its revenues to secure its note. And for general obligation bonds, the taxing authority is that security. So
well, today, the real news today is that there was an increase in Union County's bond rating. So what does the increase in that rating mean?
Okay, a bond rating for the counties, cities, or folks that issue bonds in the open market is generally like a FICO credit score. So the better or the higher your rating, the lower the cost of borrowing. The lower your rating, the higher cost. So what that means is that for the residents in Union County, we're able, when we go out to borrow debt, is to borrow that at the cheapest rate possible in the market. And that means our signals to the market as we get a higher credit rating that we are a better credit or there's less risk in buying debt from Union County or loaning us money, if you will.
So tell me about, and tell our viewers about, the organization Standard & Poor and the relationship that organization has to Union County government.
Well, when you go out to the open market and the market, you hear about the Dow Jones Industrial Average, all those different things, and for instance, you own, or if you have a 401k, or insurance companies own bond portfolios. All of these are different types of instruments for investments. So when the rating agencies, and their Standard & Poor's, Fitch, Moody's, and several others, and what they'll do is they'll come in and do an assessment of, in our case, the county, look at our financial statements, our management policies, the economy in our area, and those things, and then give a score or a rating to the county. Mm-hmm. And it's important because what that does then is signals to the market what they should be paying for as far as a risk premium for the county's debt. So when we go out to borrow, for instance, the market can look at our ratings, and we have Fitch, Moody's, and S&P and generally on our bonds, and they'll say, okay, if they're all rated AA+, then that's a really good credit. So we don't expect as high a return because generally return's related to risk. So we don't expect as high a return on bonds when we invest in Union County. And that's kind of what you see is with those rating agencies, then that signals to the market where you're at. And it's a quick and easy way for the market to know, without having to actually pick up your financial statements, to understand where you are.
Well, I read the report that was issued by the S&P and was really impressed with the statement that was included from the credit analyst who reviewed Union County's portfolio. And I'm going to read that because I think that our viewers will be interested. So Timothy Little, who is a credit analyst for Standard & Poor, he audited Union County's books. He stated that the upgrade reflects our view of the county's debt restructuring and sustained very strong reserves. The AA long-term rating reflects our assessment of the county's very strong budgetary flexibility and liquidity. Jeff, I think that that should make you very proud of your team. I know that the commissioners have said many times, they have told you what a great job you're doing in leading the finance department here, and I just want to take a moment to congratulate
Thank you.
because this is a big deal. This is along with the awards that you have gotten recently and in years past for the budget process. So congratulations on that.
Thank you.
And I'll move into the next question and just ask, what factors did the S&P use to establish Union County's rating?
Well, when you look at credit ratings, there's several factors that go into that. Some of those things we control, some of those things we don't. And when S&P was looking at Union County, they were looking at our local economy, meaning how close are we to Charlotte, what's our exposure, what's our risk to an economic downturn, and so forth. And we're very lucky to, in some respects, from an economic perspective, to be close to a major hub like Charlotte. So our exposure, our diversity in our economy is a lot less than a lot of communities. And in some ways, our reliance on residential property versus commercial property helps us in that if you have a large business and it moves out of town, it has a larger impact than a lot of houses. And from that perspective, it's a positive. There are obviously a lot of pros and cons to that. The other thing that they look at is kind of your management. How do we do in finance, how we manage our portfolio, how the manager manages the organization, how the commission manages the organization from a perspective of their policies and things they put in place. And a lot of the work that's been done over the last couple of years as far as fund balance policies, budgetary policy, those kinds of things have really strengthened how Wall Street essentially views Union County. And I think that it helps as we go forward to be able to make that argument. And we see that, and that's one of the things that they commented. We've also had really several good budgetary years where we have our internal controls in our budget process. We end the year without overspending our budget. We have tight controls through the year, and we always end with a little bit of a surplus and can use those things to buy down future debt or use that funding to buy down capital projects. So they really look at that as a real positive. And then as we've worked on our debt portfolio over the last few years, couple of years, we've been able to, even in this year, save the county about $9 million as far as present value through restructuring and reworking, if you will, refinancing like you would at your house, through restructuring our debt portfolio. So those are the things that they look at and they consider really important and as a good signal that the county is moving in the right direction financially.
That's a huge savings.
It is.
That's a huge savings. So fiscal sustainability is a priority of the county commission here in Union County. Define fiscal sustainability.
Fiscal sustainability and how we use it is kind of the idea that all the decisions we make, we kind of run through this filter of how will they look 5 years from now. So anything we do, we're always aiming at trying to improve the future cash flow, future financial position of the county. Whether that's determining how much we give to outside agencies, how much we give to inside departments, what we borrow as far as new debt, what we don't borrow as far as new debt, what projects we put into place. We're really trying to ensure the long-term viability of our services. And fiscal sustainability is just a way to say that we want to be sure 5 years from now that we can provide the services we need to provide.
Well, and I know that you have answered this next question a little bit in some of the things that you said earlier, but I feel like our viewers at home might be wondering, why does the county have to accrue debt? Why don't the tax dollars fund everything that is needed to provide government services? Can you answer that question for us?
Sure. And our debt really comes in two specific areas. We have mostly schools, which is the general obligation, and then our utilities. In both cases, for instance, if we were to go and build a new, let's say a new elementary school, and it was $15 million, to build that all as cash, we would have to raise our tax rate about 6 cents. But we can borrow that over a 20-year period, and the tax rate would go up about a penny and a half. So I think that that's one of the things why you'd want to look at that. The other idea is intergenerational equity. So that if the taxpayer today isn't paying for the taxpayer of the future's use of the facility. So in water, for instance, when we borrow revenue bonds, which are completely funded out of the water rate, the person paying for that debt over time are the people taking water out of that system, not the people that were before or paid into that from the past. So it's really a balancing act, trying to ensure that the users of the facility are paying for the cost of that facility. So whether that's GO bonds, as you know, you don't look back and say, all the people that have put their kids through the schools, for instance, are paying, that the people putting their kids through the schools now are paying, or in the water rates where the users of that water system are paying for that infrastructure forward-looking over the next 20 years, not as we had taken it or saved it up over time. So
that helps clarify and does make a lot of sense. So thank you for that. So were there any concerns expressed in the report from Standard & Poor?
Sure. I think probably the same concerns that we've had as staff, and I think they echoed kind of our sentiment as we talked about even during budget time, is that within the confines of the government and the things we manage, that the manager manages, we feel pretty confident that we can continue the way we've been in the past and keep our tax rate low and be able to manage our organization to that. But I think the biggest risk kind of the Union County faces is those external agencies that could have a big impact. And we've spent the last 2 years talking about schools and the recent lawsuit and the final decision on that and kind of how that impacts. So it's those outside agencies, the schools, the volunteer fire departments, SPCC, and EMS, that really kind of are going to pinch this government over time, and we don't have control or direct control over what they do. So we feel confident that within what the manager controls and what we manage here at the county that's within our budget, and now your general county tax rate, that we feel like we'll be fine. But your fire and EMS and schools, those still remain to be seen, and the market recognizes that's a risk for the county. So I think it remains to be seen how that plays out over time.
So in closing, how do you feel this benefits, if you could summarize everything, how does this benefit the residents of Union County, this rate?
Sure. Well, it works just like your mortgage at home. So the higher the rating, the lower the cost of borrowing. So in the future, when we go out to market, whether it's through refunding or to issue new debt, we'll be able to get a lower cost to that debt. And a couple of basis points on a mortgage or on debt doesn't seem like a lot, but when if you issue $100 million, a few basis points is significant savings. Right. So it could be several $100,000 a year, and that several $100,000 could pay for deputies, could pay for any number of things within the county. So we're always trying to make it such that we have the lowest cost of service what we can possibly provide. And we continue to work on that, and we'll continue to work on our debt portfolio. It's pretty much something we do all the time, even during budget time or even CAFR time. So hopefully we'll continue to round off the edges a little bit.
Well, thank you for taking time to be with us today, and congratulations again on all your recent awards and on this great news from the S&P. And thank you for tuning in to another edition of Union County Conversation. I hope you have a great day in Union County.